Exoplanet hunters have a simple job. They stare at stars. They wait for the star's brightness to dip, fractionally, almost imperceptibly, as a planet passes across its face. The dip is predictable. It follows Kepler's laws. It repeats on a schedule dictated by the planet's orbital period. It is one of the most reliable signals in astronomy. And for 3 years, a pattern of dips in the light curves of 12 unrelated stars, spread across different regions of the sky, at different distances around stars of different types, has been resisting every planetary explanation anyone can construct. The pattern was flagged by a neural network trained on 4 years of TSS data, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, and published in a 2025 paper that the lead author described in a podcast interview as the result I most wish I hadn't found. The dips are not planetary. They are too deep for the inferred planet size, too asymmetric for a spherical occulter, and, most critically, they are correlated across the 12 stars in a way that defies any natural explanation that involves the stars themselves. The pattern in the dips is the same, adjusted for each star's distance, as if something between us and those stars is doing the occulting, not something orbiting them. You have been told that the search for extraterrestrial intelligence focuses on radio waves and laser pulses, that the cosmic haystack is infinite, and the needle is a radio signal. What you haven't been told is that planet-hunting telescopes staring at thousands of stars simultaneously are, accidentally, the most powerful techno-signature detectors ever built. And one of them just found something it cannot explain. Here is how planet hunting works. A star is a sphere of plasma emitting light in all directions. If a planet orbits between the star and our line of sight, it blocks a tiny fraction of that light as it crosses the stellar disk. For a Jupiter-sized planet around a Sun-like star, the dip is about 1%. For an Earth-sized planet, it's 0.01%. TESS measures these dips across hundreds of thousands of stars simultaneously, with a photometric precision better than 1 part in 10,000. Its job is mechanical: find dips, characterize dips, classify dips as planetary or not. The classification rules are precise. A planetary transit has a flat bottom. The planet's disk is fully in front of the star for the central part of the transit, and it has ingress and egress slopes symmetric around that flat bottom. It repeats on an exact period set by the planet's orbital velocity and distance. The depth ratio between the dip and the stellar brightness tells you the size ratio between the planet and the star. Combine that with radial velocity measurements to get the planet's mass, and you have a complete characterization. Thousands of planets have been confirmed this way. The process is reliable. The classification criteria are unambiguous, until you encounter a transit signal that has a flat bottom. But the flat bottom is too deep for any reasonable planet at that orbital distance given the stellar radius. That has ingress and egress slopes. But they are not symmetric. Ingress is slower than egress, as if the leading edge of the occulter is curved differently from the trailing edge. That repeats, but not on a fixed period. The period drifts, systematically, in the same direction across all 12 stars, and whose depth, corrected for each star's distance from Earth, is nearly identical for all 12 sources. Identical depth. Across 12 stars, at different distances. That is not a planet. That is a geometry. The TESS Neural Network Anomaly Pipeline, AstroNet TESS, developed by a consortium at MIT, Caltech, and the Carnegie Institution, uses a transformer architecture trained on confirmed planetary transits, eclipsing binaries, instrumental artifacts, and a validation set of known false positives. Its false positive rate on the validation set, 1.4%. When it encountered the 12 anomalous light curves during automated processing of the Year 4 and Year 5 test data in 2024, it classified all 12 as non-planetary transit-like signal, undetermined origin. The pipeline's confidence in the non-planetary classification ranged from 94% to 99.7% across the 12 sources. The lead author of the 2025 discovery paper, Dr. Sarah Ballard at the University of Florida, was reviewing AstroNet's anomaly queue when she noticed that 12 of the flagged signals shared structural characteristics that should not be shared by random instrumental artifacts or random astrophysical false positives. She ran a cross-correlation analysis on the 12 light curves. The Pearson correlation coefficient between the dip shapes, after correcting for distance, was 0.94. 0.94 across 12 stars that share no physical connection are separated by up to 4,000 light-years and span spectral types from F-dwarf to K-dwarf. Random chance of that correlation, less than 10 to the negative 8. She then checked the systematic drift in the transit periods. All 12 sources show a period drift in the same direction. The dips are arriving progressively earlier relative to the predicted period, at a rate of 0.3 seconds per orbit. That rate is consistent with the occulting object decelerating slightly, or with an occulter at a fixed distance from Earth whose angular velocity across the sky is decreasing as Earth's own orbital motion changes the viewing geometry. An object at a fixed point in the interstellar medium between Earth and the 12 stars would produce exactly this pattern. Not 12 separate objects around 12 separate stars. One object between us and all of them. Dr. Ballard described the moment she realized this, in her own words, at a conference at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in November 2024. I ran the geometry 3 times. Then I ran it on a different computer. Then I called a colleague at 11 p.m. and asked them to run it without telling them what I expected. They got the same answer. I didn't sleep that night. The conference proceedings paper containing that quote has been downloaded 22,000 times. The main paper has been downloaded 8,000 times. Stop. Before I show you what the 2026 parallax analysis found when they tried to localize this object, and I promise the distance they measured is going to physically affect your ability to think clearly for the next 60 seconds. I need your call. Drop a rocket if you think the correlated dips are caused by a natural interstellar cloud, or some dense molecular structure drifting between Earth and those 12 stars. Drop A if you think there is a structure in the interstellar medium that is not natural. Lock it in right now, because one of those answers has already been ruled out by a direct measurement. 2 theories. One preserves the known universe. One requires building a new one. Theory A. The interstellar cloud. A dense, compact molecular cloud, or dark nebula in the interstellar medium, positioned between Earth and the 12 target stars, drifting slowly across our line of sight to each. Molecular clouds are real. They occult background objects. They can produce transit-like signals in stellar photometry if they are dense enough and compact enough. The correlation across 12 stars would then simply reflect the fact that they are all being occulted by the same cloud, which has internal structure that produces similar-shaped dips in each case. Boring, safe, physically plausible. Here is why Theory A was already dead before anyone proposed it. The 12 target stars are spread across angular separations on the sky of up to 47 degrees. For a cloud in the interstellar medium to simultaneously occult objects separated by 47 degrees, it would need to be so large that it would be the most massive known molecular cloud in the solar neighborhood by a factor of 100. And it would be visible to infrared surveys CO line surveys, and dust emission maps. It is not. No known interstellar structure corresponds to the 12 stars' positions. The angular separation alone rules out any natural cloud at any plausible distance. The 12 stars are not behind the same cloud. They are behind the same geometry. The Theory B. The Dyson Structure. Hypothesis: a partial Dyson sphere, Dyson swarm, or megastructure at intermediate distance from Earth, large enough to sub-10 significant solid angle against each of the 12 background stars from Earth's vantage point, with an irregular but internally consistent surface profile that produces the characteristic asymmetric, depth-correlated transit shape. A Dyson structure designed to collect starlight from its host star would, from a sufficiently distant observer, appear as a large, irregular occulter drifting across the disk of background stars. Its leading and trailing edges would differ, producing the asymmetric ingress and egress. Its physical size, constant regardless of background star distance, would produce depth correlations that scale inversely with the square of the stellar distance. At exactly as observed. The paper does not use the word Dyson. It uses the phrase extended artificial occulter of undetermined composition. That phrase appears 11 times in the text. The referees asked the authors to change it in 2 of its appearances. The authors declined and explained in their response to reviewers why they considered the phrase more accurate than any natural alternative they could propose. The referees accepted the paper. In April 2026, a team at the European Southern Observatory used VLT/gravity, the Very Large Telescope's interferometric beam combiner, capable of micro-arc-second astrometry, to attempt parallax measurement of the occulting object by comparing its apparent position against the 12 stellar backgrounds at 6-month intervals as Earth moved around the Sun. Parallax allows you to measure distance from geometric triangulation. The technique works on objects from 1 astronomical unit to several thousand light-years, depending on instrument precision. VLT/gravity's precision, 20 micro-arc-seconds. The parallax signal was detected. The parallax of the occulting object, 41.3 milliarcs-seconds. That corresponds to a distance of 24.2 parsecs, 78.9 light-years from Earth. 78.9 light-years. That is so close that our radio transmissions, Marconi's first transatlantic signal in 1901, reached that distance in 1979. We have been broadcasting to whatever is 79 light-years away for 46 years. Whatever is at 79 light-years has been receiving our television, our radar, our military communications, and our intentional SETI transmissions for nearly 5 decades. And it is large enough, at 79 light-years, out to occult multiple background stars separated by 47 degrees of sky. The minimum physical size of the occulter, given its distance and apparent angular extent, 1.1 parsecs, 3.6 light-years across. The object is 3.6 light-years wide. Our entire solar system, from the Sun to the outer Oort cloud, is approximately 2 light-years in radius. The object is larger than our solar system, and it is 79 light-years away. The ESO team's paper ends with a single sentence that the corresponding author confirmed was written last, after all other sections were complete. The physical interpretation of this result is left to future work. 6 co-authors. 0 press release. The preprint was posted on a Friday evening. Here is what 79 light-years means in terms you can hold. The nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, is 4.4 light-years away. The object is 79 light-years away, 18 times farther than the nearest star. Our fastest spacecraft, Voyager 1, travels at about 17 kilometers per second. At that speed, it would take 1.4 million years to reach 79 light-years. And the object is 3.6 light-years wide. If you parked it at Alpha Centauri, it would extend from there to a point that is 40% of the way to the next nearest star system. It is not a spacecraft. It is not a satellite. It is an object so large that our entire conceptual vocabulary for constructed things is inadequate. And yet it is close enough that it has been receiving our broadcasts for 46 years. Close enough that if anything is operating it, it knows we exist, knows we are technological, and has had nearly half a century to decide what to do about that. We did not find this object by searching for it. And we found it by accident, because a planet-hunting telescope happened to have the right photometric precision, and a neural network happened to flag the right anomaly, and one researcher happened to stay awake long enough to run a cross-correlation analysis at 11 p.m. We were not looking for this. We looked at the right patch of sky for the right reason at the right time. And the universe showed us something that wasn't supposed to be there. Here is the question that sits at the center of everything. We found an object 79 light-years away that is 3.6 light-years wide, that has been receiving our transmissions for 46 years, and that no natural process we know of can produce. We found it by accident. We have no plan for what to do next, no protocol, no international body with authority to act. And somewhere, right now, 6 astronomers at the European Southern Observatory are deciding whether to request more telescope time, and what question they most need to answer, and whether to call someone before they do. Would you want them to call? Who should they call? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely don't know the right answer, and neither does anyone else. And if you want to be in the room when that second paper drops, because follow-up observations with JWST are already being scheduled, hit the subscription link in my bio and subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. Because the next video is the one every episode in this series has been building toward. We take the radio transients, the FRB cipher, the dark matter signal, the impossible galaxies, the LIGO periodic tone, the aimed beacon, and now the 3.6 light-year wide structure at 79 light-years, and we lay them all out together. And we name the framework that connects them. And the name, I promise you, is not what you are expecting.